Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining our webinar today for the launch of our paper, Wealth for Good Hong Kong as a Regional Philanthropy. Before I introduce our panel of distinguished experts who will be sharing their insights on how Hong Kong can become a regional philanthropy hub, I would like to briefly explain the rationale behind this important policy research paper. As many of you will know, that Hong Kong is expected to be the world's largest wealth management booking center by 2027, according to the Boston Consulting Group. As the city with the most ultra-high net worth individuals in the world, Hong Kong has always been a regional hub for family offices. This presents Hong Kong a great opportunity to tap into this deep pool of private capital to establish itself as a premier destination for philanthropy, combining both positive social impact and family legacies. Without much ado, let me invite Rex, a co-leader of our working group and the tax leader in APAC banking and capital markets at PwC Hong Kong, to go through the key recommendations of the paper. Rex, please.
Thank you, Kate. Good morning, everyone. Very nice to have the opportunity to be here to present you this paper. Against the context introduced by King, basically this paper looked at, we try to actually look at the philanthropic landscape of Hong Kong, and also some of the distinctive strength of building Hong Kong as a philanthropic hub, as a complement to Hong Kong as a family office hub. And then, of course, we also will look at some of the challenges and some of the recommendations. Okay, now let's actually first look at the some of the statistics about the family office participation in the philanthropic activities. Across the group, 74% of the family office are engaged in philanthropic activities. And in fact, family office have been actually donated quite a lot on the charitable activities. Based on these statistics in APAC, in average, the APAC family office donate around $2.7 billion every year on philanthropic activities. Coming back to home, according to a Rural China Philanthropic List 2022 report, 49 high net worth individuals in China donate more than 100 million RMB from April 21 to August 22. And the accumulative donation, the charitable donation done by these individuals amounts up to more than $10 billion. This is a huge amount. And interestingly, you actually find out of these high net worth individuals, 35% of this high net worth individual business, in fact, is in the GBA. Okay, but against this backdrop, we see Hong Kong has all the potential to be a philanthropic hub in APAC and also in the world. Now, the working group identified key area. This gives Hong Kong the distinctive strength to be the philanthropic hub. Now, first of all, Hong Kong has a long-standing history of giving. Okay, you probably actually know Hong Kong has a lot of very reputable charitable organizations. Hong Kong Jockey Club. We also have a lot of the family foundation have been doing a lot of the charitable activities over the years. Now, if we actually look at for the year of assessment, 2021, the total amount of charitable donation which has been claimed for tax deduction, both from the individual side and from the business side, among together is around 12 billion Hong Kong dollar. Okay, so it shows that Hong Kong has a long history of giving. Now, the second factor that actually makes the Hong Kong has the special strength is, of course, its status as the key international financial center. So this definitely actually makes Hong Kong as the ideal location to manage the philanthropic funding. Okay. But thirdly, Hong Kong as the gateway in and out of China also actually make Hong Kong special. This can actually facilitate the mainland high net worth individual to do philanthropic activities outside China, and at the same time, can facilitate foreign institutions to do charitable activities in China. Hong Kong, being the superconductor, has its key distinctive strength. Fourthly, is the government support. Over the years, the government has been actually providing a wide variety of social services through social welfare department and also through subsidy to the subvention. And it actually showed the government support on the social sector. And also, in last year budget, the financial secretary also gave the commitment to build Hong Kong as a philanthropic hub in order to support the development of Hong Kong as the family office hub. If we have to look at the industry itself in Hong Kong also has a very vibrant and diverse social sector. By March 2022, the number of registered tax-exempt charitable organizations in Hong Kong amounts to 9,700, almost actually 10,000 charitable organizations in Hong Kong doing philanthropic activities. Okay, so we actually can see we already have a very good ecosystem in Hong Kong. Having said that, Hong Kong also actually sees some challenges for building itself as a philanthropic hub. The working group basically have to look at 4 areas. The first one is taxation. Currently, Hong Kong allows tax deduction for charitable donation up to 35% of the net taxable income of individual and business. This standard, in an international standard, is actually not too bad, but is definitely, if we actually compare with the other jurisdiction, for example, if we compare with Singapore allow a 200% deduction versus Hong Kong only allow up to 35%. So we definitely have rooms to do better in giving tax incentive to encourage people to do philanthropic giving. That's the first area. The second area that we see Hong Kong get some challenges is the lack of regulatory clarity about what does it mean by charitable organization. There's actually no legal definition or regulatory definition of charitable organization. In Hong Kong, we generally equate charitable organization to tax-exempt charitable institution. Okay, so that means in assessing whether an organization is doing charitable activities, the government has been making reference to a very outdated court case back in 1891. And in that old court case, we only cover 4 areas as charitable activities, including poverty, education, religion, and others. So what is included in others? That's give a lot of uncertainty to the industry. As I mentioned, in Hong Kong, we only have a list of tax-exempt charitable organizations. We equate charitable organization as tax-exempt organization. In fact, it does not cover those charitable organizations who does not apply for tax exemption. Okay, because if you actually need to fulfill the tax exemption status, you need to fulfill some condition. Some organizations may not bother to actually get that tax exemption status, or they don't need that. Okay, so therefore, the current list of tax exempt organization is not the full list of organizations doing philanthropic activities in Hong Kong. The third area that we see there is some room for development is, in fact, there is actually no central body in Hong Kong to supervise or to monitor or coordinate the philanthropic activities in Hong Kong. The only organization or the body in Hong Kong get involved in the charitable organization is in Hong Kong Inland Revenue, which is the authority to give tax-exempt status to organization. So therefore, the angle or the perspective when they look at the organization is from a tax exemption status angle. Okay, there's no particular requirement on the disclosure of the activities done by the charitable organization. So although we actually got a list of around 10,000 charitable organizations, but there's actually no reporting requirement for this 10,000 organizations. There's some lack of transparency about how they apply the funding they get from the public. The final challenge that the working group identified is the cross-border donation. In fact, we actually hear a lot of the comments from the industry saying it's actually very difficult to do charitable activities in China. It primarily probably actually because of the China, the stringent regulation in China governing foreign donation. But in the meantime, it's also in Hong Kong, there's a lack of a central body to communicate or to talk to the mainland side to facilitate that cross-border donation. Now, these are the challenges that the working group identified. So based on that, the working group make a couple of policy recommendations to address all these challenges. Now, the first one is on tax incentive. The working group FSDC recommend to increase the ceiling, the deduction ceiling from 35% of the deduction cap. We increase it to a level which is comparable to the overseas standard. And at the same time, apart from, in addition to increasing the deduction ceiling, we also recommend to carry forward the excessive deduction to the next year. So right now, if you donate more than 35% of your taxable income in a year, you cannot carry forward the excessive amount. So the working group recommend we can carry forward that excessive donation to next year to set off the next year income. And we also can hear a lot of comment from the industry about right now we only allow deduction for monetary donation, but not donation for services, goods, and services. So therefore, the FSDC also recommend to extend the donation to cover non-monetary donation. Now, on the regulatory clarity side, the working group also recommend to expand the definition of charitable activities to cover the more activities in the modern world, say including climate, environment, diversity and equality, advancement of health, etc. So in fact, if we actually make reference to some other overseas jurisdictions, they have a more complete list of charitable activities under the modern world. We also recommend to establish a centralized directory of charity in Hong Kong, which should cover, in addition to the current tax-exempt charity, and including also those charitable organizations which are not tax-exempt in Hong Kong. The working group also recommend, in order to increase the transparency of charitable organizations in Hong Kong, the working group also recommend certain level of disclosure for those charitable organizations in Hong Kong. Of course, we're mindful about the administrative burden put on the reporting side, but we need to strike a balance between transparency and administrative burden. The whole objective is to give more transparency to both the donor and the donees. And then the last recommendation made by the working group is to establish a cross-sector committee and a one-stop shop to coordinate the charity industry. First of all, at the policy level, we recommend the government to set up a cross-sector committee to set strategic direction and roadmap for the industry in the context of capacity building and talent development. And these steering committee can also spearhead their effort to deepen the collaboration of the mainland China to facilitate cross-border giving. And in addition to that high-level policy-making steering committee, we also recommend setting up a one-stop shop under the steering committee to facilitate the day-to-day work, including to facilitate the carrying out some of the administrative function, managing the reporting requirement, registration of the charitable organization, maintenance of a centralized directory, and also education. Okay, like that one-stop shop does not necessarily be a regulatory body, but it's more as a one-stop shop service center to coordinate the industry. Okay, so I just actually gave a brief summary of the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Rex, for your concise presentation. So now let us start our panel discussions on the key issues and recommendations highlighted in the paper. First, with Ruth, who is the co-leader of our working group and the co-founder and chief executive at the Center for Asian Philanthropy and Society, also known as CAPS. So Ruth, with increasing wealth, yet growing social needs, Hong Kong has seen both opportunities and challenges in the realm of charitable giving. So how has the philanthropy landscape in Hong Kong evolved in recent years? What new trends have emerged in terms of donation patterns, charity models, and forms of social investment?
Well, thank you, King, and thank you, Rex, for that excellent overview of our work. It made it seem like we did it too quickly, and in fact, it took a long time with a lot of effort, especially on the part of the FSDC team, which I really want to thank. The good news is, really good news, Rex mentioned that globally 74% of wealthy people make charitable donations. But CAPS has done a study of 135 ultra high net worth individuals in Hong Kong, Taiwan, and mainland China called the Tao of Giving. And we found 98% of those who responded make charitable donations. So we are beating the global average by quite a bit. So that's a good place to start. Hong Kong has always been philanthropic. And Rex outlined that. We have a history of being philanthropic. In many ways, it's because the Hong Kong government, throughout many types of governments, have been hands-off, leaving the opportunities up to the private sector. And I think it's really important to understand that philanthropy is a private sector-driven activity. If the government tells you to do it, then it's a tax, right? And we want to encourage people to voluntarily give and make it as easy as possible. The good news is, as I said, they do give. Historically, the major destination for philanthropic capital is toward education activities, and that is still the case now. But we are also seeing the largest transfer of wealth in modern history happening right now, including in Hong Kong, but throughout Asia. So what does the next gen want? This is kind of the billion-dollar question. What are they looking for? Well, one thing is that they're more hands-on. They tend to want to be engaged with the organizations that they help. In fact, we see that engagement, that desire for engagement, manifests itself in several ways. One is the interest in impact investing, which is the notion of investing in social enterprises or companies that are both doing good and doing well. Unfortunately, despite the rise in interest in impact investing, only 16% of global funds are deployed in Asia, and the majority of that is in India. So I'm delighted that FSDC's next study is on impact investing, because this is an area where there's huge opportunities for growth and to make a difference. But in terms of charitable giving, philanthropy, let me just make an important distinction. There is a difference between charity and philanthropy. Charity is someone is sick and they don't have enough money for an operation, and you give them that fund. It's a one-off, one-time kind of humanitarian gesture. Philanthropy is about creating systems, diagnostic systems, preventative health systems that help people not to get sick in the first place. So philanthropy is much more strategic and much more looking at system change. And I would say one of the key trends that we see in Asia and particularly in Hong Kong is that understanding and the focus more on system change and long-term remedies that solve the problem at their root. 85% of all companies in Asia are family dominated. So a lot of people are using their business acumen, their understanding of what works in the tools of profit and loss, the tools of managing a good company to think about their philanthropy in more rigorous, strategic ways. And I think that's a very positive development and one that we're going to see more of and a lot more innovation coming out of the social sector and these families as a result.
Oh, thank you. Look, thanks for highlighting the strategic importance of philanthropy. So as you said, family wealth grows exponentially in Asia. So Rex, and so does the rise of sophisticated family office structures, professionally managed legacies across generations. So how does that interplay between these two realms contribute to Hong Kong's growth as a leading asset and wealth management and international financial center?
Yeah, thank you, Kate. I think the setup of family office to manage the family wealth has become a trend in Asia in the last 10 years. Even can you mention about the exponential growth of wealth in Asia, in particular in China? In fact, based on one very recent research report, it's projected by 2027 in Asia there will be 210,000 high net worth individuals with a net worth of more than $30 million in Asia by 2027. And more than 60% of those will be coming from China. So attracting all these high net worth individuals to set up family office in Hong Kong will definitely bring significant AUM in Hong Kong. And if you have to look at the family office, they generally will invest in different asset classes. Real estate, public equities and bonds. They also participate actively in the private market, for example, private equity, VC, private debt, and more recently, even digital assets. So attracting all these high net worth individuals to set up family office in Hong Kong will definitely enrich the entire investment management ecosystem in Hong Kong, creating more jobs. Now, not only on the investment management industry, but also the industry surrounding the investment management industry, including bank, custodian, fund administrator, and other service provider, including lawyer, accountant. Now, in addition, I think family office in recent years are very open to invest in new areas. We'll talk about social impact investing, ESG, and digital asset. Having more family office based in Hong Kong can definitely bring more opportunity and talent in all these new areas to Hong Kong. So the family office, the rise of the family office in Hong Kong definitely is actually key to support Hong Kong as the leading asset wealth management center.
Oh, thank you, Rex. Well, having learned more about the philanthropy landscape from Ruth and Rex, now I want to ask John, chairman of the Hong Kong Club Foundation, to share with us his first-hand experience in the philanthropy sector. So, John, while social giving has deep roots in Hong Kong's traditions, the modern philanthropic landscape also faces many evolving complexities in this fast-paced global financial hub. So what are some of the challenges that many charitable organizations currently face in Hong Kong?
Thank you, King, for your question. I also would like to acknowledge FSDC's hard work in producing this paper, and it's been a pleasure sitting on this working party. I have been the chairman of the Hong Kong Club Foundation for the last 9 years, and I have visited more than 150 small NGOs because we specialize in helping the small NGOs, those are with turnover of less than 10 million Hong Kong dollars. Their greatest challenge is money and lack of resources. And so this would be wonderful if there were more bodies and more family offices start up philanthropic activities in Hong Kong. And I'm sure if they're giving money overseas, particularly to China. I'm sure that small NGOs and larger NGOs would be very grateful for another pot of money coming their way. So the greatest challenge for small NGOs, I would say, is money. Now, looking at the big NGOs, and I'm wearing my hat now as a board member of St. James's Settlement, where I have sat for more than 40 years. And the big NGOs are faced now not so much with resources. The bigger ones are well resourced. The biggest problem is manpower, particularly during the last few years with immigration. They have lost a lot of experienced professionals, and this causes problems and also opportunities for younger people to move up into more experienced roles. But it's difficult to replace that experience overnight. So thank you for that question. And I'll pass it back to you, King.
Oh, thanks, John, for sharing these challenges with us. So now I must ask Vivian, who is the partner and head of asset management and ESG at Dentons Hong Kong, to share her view on some of the regulatory issues that the philanthropy sector faces. So Vivian, as a world-class financial hub and gateway between the East and West, Hong Kong has long been at the forefront of facilitating cross-border capital flows and exchanges of all kinds. However, cross-border philanthropy faces unique challenges. What common hurdles do industry players encounter regarding these cross-border donations, both receiving funds from abroad and running programs in places like the Greater Bay Area?
Thank you for that question, King. And thanks for that introduction. Perhaps I can kind of say a little bit more to give context to what I'm about to share here. So I lead asset management and ESG in my practice, and a lot of that actually relates to sustainable finance and looking at how this has evolved in the related legal, regulatory, and tax aspects in the broader ecosystem, covering both advising non-profit as well as for-profit. That therefore, I think is really a good timing for Hong Kong to be having a look at the philanthropy sector, and I'm grateful to have the opportunity to contribute on the working group, and also would like to thank the FSDC team for the great efforts they have in producing this report. I think a big part of what I've been seeing in the past 8 to 10 years is actually elevation of values, and I also see how that is manifested in sort of capacity building, where we see families as well as organizations more focused on manifestation of their values, and also this idea of stewardship in the public markets, as well as in asset management, impact investing, as Ruth and Rex mentioned, and also in how families are looking at their maximizing or mobilizing their capital and kind of in their philanthropic giving, and also more interested in having a bigger impact through impact investing. So in that context, I have actually been advising a lot of organizations of that different diverse background on these aspects of cross-border giving. And I sit on a number of nonprofit boards as well. So some of my experience is in that hat, and a lot of kind of ecosystem and standard setting efforts that I'm involved in also help and enhance my understanding. One area of kind of giving is often mapping out what are the legal, regulatory, and tax considerations for giving. And when it's in the cross-border context in Hong Kong, I think I have to highlight where we actually have some kind of good existing framework to begin with, but there are certain limitations that are challenges that the working group has together identified. So oftentimes I would have to kind of diffuse sort of what the paper has done, what is referred to by a charitable organization, because we don't have a central kind of registry of charities, and only tax-exempt charities are listed by the RRD, and even then, that is an option. So sometimes in the process of giving, also for those who want to set up charities, first to diffuse the understanding what it means to set up a charity, And then there's a question of whether you want to fundraise, you want to get tax exemption. But without that, you don't have a way of referring to yourself as a charity necessarily. So that's one of the issues. And then when it comes to giving and planning activities, because of the narrow definition that we have on what's charitable activities, so that's sometimes an area of challenge that may not enable the operators or the funders to really align what we like to do with the activities that they have to align that with the kind of narrow range of objects. So that's the other challenge. And the other which I'll highlight is that while we look at that across often mapping the laws and regulations of the structures and setting up, and also depending on where the funders are from, where the activities are to be conducted. I think one aspect of cross-border giving that we highlight is a big change in the past 8 to 10 years. It's also considering the change in law in the mainland that has created new challenges for the sector in Hong Kong, because historically, a lot of charities may have set up here or with a view to funding activities in China, but with the introduction of the overseas NGO law in China, I think that's one of the challenge in terms of bridging that. But at the same time, I have seen very exciting initiatives of family offices setting up in Hong Kong, and also some listed companies from the mainland coming to Hong Kong and interested in community investment and setting up charities. So there are actually, I think, a lot to look forward to in terms of Hong Kong potential, leveraging on what we have. But at the same time, I think the report actually reflects sort of the challenges and the recommendations of the paper, which will help address some of those challenges.
Kane, may I comment also on this question, please? Thank you. Thank you, Vivian. I just want to point out a couple of things. Hong Kong has been a global city for a long time, and the people who live here are global citizens. We have a pretty sophisticated group of people who live in Hong Kong, and many of them have been funding abroad. That is why Harvard and MIT and Oxford set up shop here in order to fundraise, Save the Children, Nature Conservancy, Room to Read, fundraise here, a lot. So Hong Kong has been, Hong Kong's generosity, the people of Hong Kong's generosity has been a gift to global nonprofits, be they universities or NGOs, to do their work. The only real challenge, and Hong Kong is separate from other jurisdictions in Asia in that it does allow money to flow out without penalty. And that's a huge advantage for family offices here or anyone who wants to, even a person like me who doesn't have a family office. If I want to make a philanthropic donation outside of Hong Kong, no problem, I can, and people do. So that's really important, and it's in the DNA of how Hong Kong interacts with the world. The challenge is funding into mainland China. It used to be that it was easy. And of course, the majority of people in Hong Kong come from mainland China. So there is part of also the DNA of wanting to give back, to wanting to help, to wanting to give to one's ancestral homelands. China has changed the rules, and it is harder to give into China. Hong Kong is still thought of as an international place, not part of the mainland. So I'm delighted that one of the recommendations of this study is to have this working group that will facilitate conversations at the highest levels to think about and how Hong Kong can be that gateway between the world and the people in Hong Kong and China, because so many people are so interested in investing and invested in China's continued success.
Thank you, Ruth, for highlighting our unique opportunities and characteristics. Actually, you've answered my next question, but I want to highlight again that our speakers have pointed out consistently that the standard of our philanthropic sector has been improving, given the sophistication that we are gaining over time. So now let's look at some of these bottleneck issues as well as our recommendations in more detail. So I'll start with you, Ruth. So despite the challenges facing the industry. So Hong Kong is poised to play a bigger role for different actors in the philanthropic sector, as you just mentioned earlier. So what are the key strengths that position Hong Kong as a hub to better facilitate philanthropy across Asia as a whole?
Well, thank you very much, King. I think Rex did a great job of outlining the 5 characteristics that we also agree are key to Hong Kong's success. One is a very deep philanthropic tradition. So Hong Kong's been doing this for a long time. And organizations like St. James Settlement or Tung Hua Hospitals have been around forever because the government was somewhat hands-off during the British times, and the wealthy Chinese community here stepped up. So that philanthropic tradition is important. People don't necessarily say, oh, I've got a problem, the government needs to solve it. People here say, there's a problem, I need to solve it. And so that kind of self-actualization through philanthropy is really deep here and very important. Second, of course, as Rex said, there's a lot of wealthy people. But having said that, it's not just the wealthy people. I mean, all of us, I think the majority of us on this call are in Hong Kong. And there are people out on the streets asking you for money. They wouldn't be there if it didn't succeed. The average Hong Kong person is extremely generous and philanthropic. You don't need to be worth 30 million. I mean, great if you are, but you don't have to be, because there's a level of engagement in helping your fellow humanity that's very high in Hong Kong. Also, as we said, there's a level of sophistication here. We understand financial instruments, we understand business, and that's important because many nonprofit organizations need not only money, but they need intellectual and experiential resources to help them succeed. A nonprofit may have the heart of gold, but unless they understand how to keep good accounting books, you can help in this regard, or unless they know how to manage their human resources, which, as John pointed out, is increasingly challenging, they have challenges. And so helping in that regard is really important. And then we do have talent, even though some are leaving, some more are coming in. My organization, the Center for Asian Philanthropy and Society, I know it's a mouthful, CAPS, we do research, advisory, and convening around philanthropy, CSR, impact investing, and we have people trying to work with us all the time, which is really a blessing. So I think that if you are an attractive place to work, you can find the talent here, and we have. And then, of course, there's the gateway to mainland China. And I think it's only a matter, it's not if, it's when, where those discussions happen and that Hong Kong can be a philanthropic conduit to the mainland. So those are all the strengths. And let me just say, Hong Kong has more than 9,000 nonprofit organizations. Those are the ones that are approved by the IRD as Section 88 tax-exempt charities. And I think it was John that said, that's not all of them because many don't. So it's really, we have an extraordinary, vibrant, robust, and engaged group of people here. And that is an extraordinary asset.
Absolutely, I cannot agree more. That sets out a lot of opportunity for us. So let's see if we can give them more incentive, right, to develop and evolve. So while altruism inherently motivates many to support social causes, strategic policies can further unleash generosity. So how might tax incentives that you mentioned earlier for charitable donation can spur greater philanthropy while attracting impact-focused family offices to the region?
Yeah, okay, thank you, Kate. I think we probably can look at this question in two things. One is the charitable tax incentive for charitable donation, and then we actually look at impact investing. Okay, you also mentioned about how to attract more impact investing in Hong Kong. Tax incentive for charitable donation, I personally believe it plays a very important and crucial role in encouraging philanthropic activities, in particular for donors. And this is in fact a very common way for all the jurisdictions to encourage donation. By offering actually tax deduction or credit for donation, the government effectively co-fund the charitable activities. So you can imagine, for example, for every $100 donation made by the donor, the government gives them back, for example, $15 tax saving. So effectively, for that $100 donation, 85 is actually made by the donor, and then 15 is actually made by the government. So I think that tax incentive will actually demonstrate the government willingness to support the philanthropic activities, and at the same time can incentivize individuals and businesses to allocate more of their income to do charitable giving, leading to the rise in the philanthropic activities. That's on the charitable donation side. But on the impact investing, the current regime, the tax incentive may not serve that purpose, because normally the tax incentive only given for donation. Donation means give without any consideration. Okay, but for impact investing, we probably need to think about other incentives. For example, giving a tax incentive for the return coming from impact investing, or even actually give them a tax break. Not every project will be successful. For some failure project, you can actually get a tax break. This is something the government can consider.
Yeah, thank you, Rex, for highlighting the importance of tax incentive. But now, John, I want to turn back to you as a practitioner. So trust is the foundation upon which any philanthropic endeavor is built. So besides providing incentives, how important is regulatory clarity and consistency in facilitating philanthropic activities? What benefits would an updated definition of charitable purposes bring to the sector overall?
Thank you, King. Hong Kong in this area is extremely old-fashioned. As highlighted by both Rex and Vivian, we need to get a move on and change the definition of charity. This is nothing revolutionary. This is the Law Reform Commission report that I was involved in. 11 years ago, the recommendation was made to update the definition of charity. And we looked at other countries who are in the common law system: New Zealand, Australia, Singapore, England and Wales, Scotland. And we looked at this carefully and came up with a definition. It's time Hong Kong got a move on in this area. And I think it gives so much more clarity to potential people looking in this area to have a good definition. So let's just get a move on, Hong Kong.
Yeah, thanks for that sharing, John. Now, I want to turn to Vivian. So given philanthropy's expansive scope across diverse domains and players, coordinated efforts are crucial to maximizing impact. So the report suggested establishing a cross-sector steering committee and one-stop service center to drive policy coordination and strengthen collaboration respectively. So what key roles might these bodies play in cultivating synergies through joint strategic planning, knowledge sharing, and streamlining operations?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I guess I mentioned earlier that I've been engaged in the ecosystem and social engagement. And so I would mention that I kind of been doing that in the context of my role, leading sustainable finance globally, our global sustainable finance working group, and Benton, which is the largest global law firm with more than 80 jurisdictions. Because sustainable finance really involves kind of the understanding of the international standards, where that's going, and also applying it locally in the context. So what the point I'd like to make here is that it's very important to develop understanding as a first step to capacity building, and then looking at where there are challenges and sort of take steps towards addressing those challenges. I would say that I think this report exactly sits to do that. And so we have in the sustainable finance space, seen how quickly the Hong Kong has responded and really has been leading in the efforts and standard setting for sustainable finance and having the cross-sector steering committee on sustainable finance. So in the same way, I think we can recognize the needs as shared here to do this in the philanthropic space. And I mentioned earlier as well that this is great timing. At the recent COP28, there's actually two key shifts that I would mention. First, climate has always been seen as a risk, but it's the first time that it's being framed as an investment opportunity. So I think this is going to foster and support further impact investing. And at the same time, there's the declaration of a new effort to reform financial architecture in order to mobilize more sources of capital for sustainable development. And this is where blended finance come in. But in ecosystem building, we need to get every segment kind of elevated and growth in knowledge and sophistication in order to contribute it across. So I think having a cross-sector steering committee for philanthropy, the one-stop service center can play the role of policy vision, as well as shaping and supporting the sector in implementation and practice. It can do so as a designated contact point to develop understanding, foster collaboration and communication, provide guidance and support to the sector, and educate the sector where it needs to kind of elevate in knowledge and also educate the public. And so that will, I guess, enable us to have an infrastructure that can leverage on what we already have, the strengths of Hong Kong, as Ruben Rex mentioned, that can enable us to respond to the broader ecosystem change in terms of sustainable finance and blended finance.
Thank you, William.
I just want to thank you very much. I just want to pick up on John's points having to do with trust. I think that as I've been saying, Hong Kong's extremely philanthropic, but John's right that we're rather conservative in that philanthropy. So around the world right now, the philanthropic community is discussing this notion of trust-based philanthropy. And what does that mean? It means that you have to establish an ongoing relationship with the recipient of your, philanthropic capital so that you trust them to do the right thing. And how that manifests itself often is a move away from project support to operational support. We're not particularly good at operational support in Hong Kong. Many donors like to give project-based support, but we saw during COVID a group of organizations, and John's foundation was one of them, really stepping up and saying, we need to give more trust-based philanthropy. We need to give more operational support. And why is that important? Because times change. No one thought we were going to deal with COVID. While we were dealing with COVID, the demands on the nonprofit sector grew, the funding shrank. So organizations need to be able to pivot. They also need to be able to train their people, do capacity building. All of that requires funding that sometimes doesn't fit very nicely in a project profile. And so they need a little bit of extra cash to do other things, to help them stay ready and effective to meet changing times. And so I think that this distinction between project-based support and trust-based support is really important. And I see that shift slowly starting to happen in Hong Kong, and it's important.
Yeah, thanks for highlighting this. It's really key to our future success. We need public-private partnership. Everyone needs to work together. So on that note, I want to open the panel to questions from the audience. So I've got this question. I will open this to all our panelists. So it's from Virginia Low. Setting up a single-family office or even a multi-family office when the time comes is generally the first easy step. So what measures or incentives should be preempt to retain single-family office set up in Hong Kong? Can speakers please share what they see as major challenges and opportunities for retaining single-family offices. This is one contributor to sustainability. You agree? So maybe I'll start with Rex first.
Okay, so the question is how to
To retain single-family offices.
retain single-family office. Okay. We have been actually advising some of the single-family office when they actually start to actually first up. So I think one of the challenges is talent. Okay, basically is you maintain a single-family office, you actually need to get talent from different disciplines, investment, philanthropy. So how to identify the right team, which the high net worth individual can trust to build that single family office is actually one of the challenges. Now we have the infrastructure over the years, we saw out the tax issue, we saw the regulatory issue, but the talent pool, okay, so where to actually find those talent which can deal with different disciplines, I think this is a challenge. So if the government can actually do more to facilitate the visibility or to have a talent pool which the single family office can get access to, then I think that will definitely help the single family office to continue to build up their resources.
Well, thanks for doing the marketing for our new academy for wealth management. This is our main goal. So, John, can you share again, your practitioner's perspective? Are you finding talent a challenge?
Yes. On speaking with family offices who have a philanthropic arm, I just would like to specialize in just the area of philanthropy. There's one particular single family office I know very well. And yes, it is a big problem is talent. And this is something that we need to work on, and recommendations I think are in the report that we need to work harder on training up people to work in the philanthropy business. And we've done this before in many areas, and so we need our excellent universities to come to the party and produce more courses, to produce talented individuals that see a career in this area. And I think that's a very important aspect of Hong Kong to make us something that somewhere that people want to come and set up philanthropic arm to their family office.
Yes, absolutely. There are quite a few universities now in Hong Kong offering programs in this particular area. So maybe Vivian, you can share your view too.
Yeah, I'd like to comment. And firstly, I think I would really encourage everyone to kind of go through the report. And in the report, we also have a map of the key stakeholders in the ecosystem. And you can see that there are government, research institutions, incubators, capacity building organizations, and also service providers besides the philanthropic organizations themselves and the intermediaries. So I think when we think about capacity building and also to answer the question in terms of having a single family office and how can you then develop your impact focus with that structure, I think it's perhaps a function of leveraging what we offer in Hong Kong already, a very extensive and rich ecosystem. And I think in terms of service providers, there's also many who are responding to the trend, as I mentioned, in the need to advise family offices, high net worth individuals, and how they can engage in impact investing and philanthropic giving. I think a couple of weeks ago, I was on a panel organized by Philanthropic Impact together with CAPS and also ABPN, on which I've been an advisory board member for a number of years. So I think this idea of knowing what else is in the ecosystem and getting the leverage on support is probably going to be key. So that's why I think it's really back to the point of having a one-stop shop to foster that communication and collaboration.
Thank you. Yeah. I have a question specifically for Ruth from Glenn Pickle. Ruth, Glenn works for a multi-family office established a long time ago, which has many projects here in Hong Kong, which are established and impactful. but selling the idea to, say, for example, China single-family office, what impact should we be speaking about, especially when this is so new to them sometimes? So what's the best approach? Please share your experience with us.
Thank you very much for that question. So we also work in China, and we noticed that in China, many of the donors like to be surrounded by other people who are also donors. So it means that in addition to doing their philanthropic giving or their impact investing or what they're doing, they're interested in forming a community around this. And there's many examples of that. And I think that with the Wealth Legacy Academy, essentially making people feel like they're part of something that's not just the act of giving money, but being part of a friend group, of a community that's engaged in this way is of real interest to mainland Chinese who may be operating in Hong Kong and not have that kind of wide community, or anyone, because we're all humans and we seek those relationships. So I think rather than thinking about this as a transaction, we should think about it as a way of life, and that includes who you're working with. And Vivian is exactly right. It is about the entire ecosystem, which helps. So I thought about this a lot. What happened at the beginning of Silicon Valley? Bill Gates didn't become philanthropic until he was about 45. Steve Jobs was never philanthropic, but David Packard and Bill Hewlett were, and they helped to change the whole dynamic such that if you became wealthy now in Palo Alto and Silicon Valley, the world kind of expects that you're also going to be engaged this way. And I think that that's really starting to happen here in Asia and absolutely in Hong Kong. So we want to be firing on all cylinders. We want all of these pieces of the ecosystem reinforcing each other, not just so that people become philanthropic, but that they're engaged in creating a healthier, better educated, sustainable life for all of us.
Absolutely. Again, thanks for marketing the academy, because that's what we want to do is establish a trusted network of peers for sharing and learning from each other.
It's really important, and it is part of doing this work.
I know we're running out of time. There's still questions from the floor, but I'd like to pause here and thank again our panel list for excellent, insightful sharing. But last but not least, also the valuable contribution from all our working group members, making this important strategic paper a reality. Thank you, everyone, for participating in this webinar.
And thank you, FSDC, for your great work in this regard.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.